Hi, this is Pat Moorhead with More Insights and Strategy, and we are here for another episode of the Hot Desk Podcast, where we're talking all things modern work. I'm joined here by my incredible co-host, author, principal analyst of modern work, Melody Brew. How are you, Mel?
Good. Doing great. How are you?
Good, man. It's Friday. I don't hear any kids in the background, any lawnmowers.
Right.
Are we gonna have like an easy peasy show here,
I
right?
hope so. I mean, we've got some great things to talk about. It's been a busy week. It's been a busy month. When I look at the date, and I cannot believe we are already at the end of August.
I know. I know. Somebody was trying to schedule with me, and I said, "Well, that's forever from now." And she's like, "No, like we're literally it's the end of August." And
Yeah.
I did one of these health, head exploding, and where has this gone? But for a lot of folks I've talked to, parents, right, kids are back to school. We're back to the grind. I literally have 6 weeks of travel straight. Okay,
Ugh.
and I'm just, praying just for energy and strength and the right decisions and
Yeah.
not having, too much sucked out of there. But hey, we do have a great show. Like you
Yeah.
said, we're talking about an IBM study. We're talking about a little bit of Microsoft here. Passive aggressive emails. Wow, it's my favorite. Oh, yeah. K, great, right?
Yep.
And we're going to talk about
For my
hot or
last
not
month.
co-working. Is it in? Is it out? I literally can't open up my Google Mail without seeing some ode to the worker and how we're all disconnected. Everybody's disconnected. So let's dive in. Mel, let's dive into IBM. Had a study reveals how AI is changing work. And it is interesting that they're in on it themselves, not just doing studies, they're taking
Right.
actions as well.
It is funny, yeah. Like if you kind of go back and recall that in May, IBM CEO said that they were going to stop hiring for some jobs that would be replaced by AI. I think they said it was about 30% of like 26,000 non-customer facing positions
Yeah.
that would be replaced by AI over a 5-year period. So that's like 7,800 jobs. But then they did a study. So they looked at 3,000 global C-suite executives across 20 industries, 28 countries from last December and January. Then they came back in May and did kind of like a pulse survey just to kind of see where things are, if they'd changed much. They looked at how companies are investing in enterprise transformation, kind of what business value is being generated related to boost productivity, effectiveness, all of that. And then they also pulled workers in 22
Yeah.
countries. And they talked about work arrangements, career mobility, employee experience, all of this. So I think, not surprising, 87% of executives believe employees are more likely to be augmented than replaced by generative AI, which I think that's interesting, being that IBM kind of came out and said they're going to replace a lot of them. But so
Yeah.
87% augmented. And executives estimated that 40%, that's a high percentage, 40% of their workforce will need to be reskilled over the next 3 years. So, and this is really a kind of across all employee groups. So workers at all levels are going to feel the effects of generative AI. Entry-level employees are going to see kind of the most of the shift. So 77% of executives said that entry-level positions already see the effects of generative AI. So that actually, we'll talk about that with Microsoft and kind of what they're doing with frontline workers with AI. But this is just going to intensify over the next few years. Only 22% of respondents said the same for executive or senior management roles. So big difference, 77% versus 22%. So, as I think AI is going to start replacing kind of more of these, repetitive menial tasks, then AI is starting to change the way people look at work. So, what they found was the study is showing that they're more interested in doing the meaningful work and less interested in the flexibility of work. So
Wait, say that one more time.
they're more interested in doing meaningful work than they are in having flexible work.
Okay.
So, I think if we look at the last couple of years, everybody has said the number one thing people care about is flexibility in work. It's all been about hybrid work, and I'm not knocking hybrid work. I'm not saying anybody should be doing a particular thing one way or the other. But when employees were asked, they said they care more about doing meaningful work than about flexibility and growth opportunity. This was a big disconnect with what the executives said. They said that they thought the meaningful work was the least impactful. They thought flexible work and compensation and job security were the most important. So I think that there's like a disconnect here caused a little bit by sort of the maybe it's like sort of the question of like the unknowns of what is going to happen related to AI.
Yeah.
But then I think there's sort of this lingering post-pandemic belief that executives still have, that their employees value remote work or hybrid work or this flexibility more than over everything else. And I think we're going to start to see a shift back to like, maybe that's not the most valued thing. And if AI is going to replace people at work, are people going to feel the need to show up a little more? And is that more meaningful work going to be more collaborative things that people want to show up for, want to be more in person? I think it's going to really change the way we work.
Yeah. I like to look at two examples historically. You know me, I like to go back to history because I'm
Yeah.
old. Um,
Well,
19,
history doesn't lie,
yeah, it's not the only predictor of the future, but it's a
right?
pretty darn good one. In
Yep.
1985, all the creatives were freaking out because desktop publishing programs came out for the Mac,
Yeah.
and everybody freaked out. All the creatives were going to lose all their jobs because remember, right, for advertising campaigns, we would literally cut out pictures, apply shapes, and then take a real photograph of that, right? And that's how we would develop copy
Yeah.
and put even advertisings together that might even be used on TV or in the grocery store. And then here we are, 35 years later, and we've democratized creativity. You did a great write up on things like Adobe Firefly, and creatives aren't out of work. There's still a
Right.
lot of work for these folks.
Yeah.
Their throughput is just going up, and
Hmm.
there are some stuff that the machines won't be able to do.
Right.
I mean, heck, I go into Stable Diffusion or something like that and type in something about a person, and their hands are all wonky and their faces are weird, right?
Right.
And I'm thinking that is not going to put anybody out of business. And then
Right.
when we move from machine code to COBOL and Fortran and Pascal, it was going to be the death of the programmer. And here we are in 2023. We can't get enough programmers, even though we have integrated development environments, IDEs, and all of this magic high order code. There
Hmm.
will be people who will lose their jobs
Right.
because I do think the areas of Web 1.0 and Web 2.0 that didn't clear those out, like travel agencies, stockbrokers, retail got reduced. Media got impacted with things like Blockbuster and the way that all media was distributed. Um, uh, Classifieds, Craigslist killed classifieds, and Facebook ads. So there will be jobs lost. I do think there will be new jobs that are available. And
Right.
aside from the lack of reskilling, when we hollowed out the Midwest with uh, auto production, steel production, plastics production, and moved it to Asia or the South, I think we're going to be okay. There are jobs that people don't want, that they don't want to show up for. That,
Right.
and I think that this gets back to one of your macro points of give me some meaning in my work,
Hmm.
and I can do this from it. If I have to come into the job, make it meaningful. I want to come in
Right.
until unemployment gets above 4 or 5%. I think the employees will still be dictating the rules of work. But we also, as a former executive, right, I got to parse between, what's real and what's not. There are some jobs that require collaboration you have to be in the office for. The tools
Mhm.
are not as effective as they need to be. Heck, there are some people who want to come in the office because
Yeah,
they want to get away from their house. There are single people who might want to meet somebody at work or
yeah,
meet some of their friends at work.
yeah,
You're a new employee and not just a new hire out of college, but a new person into a business. I don't think you have a culture uh, without a building.
right.
Now, you might be like, well, More Insights and Strategy doesn't have a building, right? And we don't committee office. We have a mature workforce on the whole. We've been in our careers. Um, we're typically not looking for our significant other. We're probably not looking for new friends. We're not good enough friends to the friends we already have.
And we
Um,
travel all the time.
and we do
So
see each other on, like we would make terrible friends. So, anyways, I don't have this all figured out for all five generations in the workforce, but it's studies like this that do bring a lot of value to this conversation. I stick to this, Mel, and I said this 3 years ago. The current collaboration tools are not good enough. They need to get better. And I think it's a major opportunity for tech vendors to move
mhm.
forward.
I think also, what this does say is the upskilling, and one thing I have been saying is that the school bans on ChatGPT, and I don't know if you've seen this, they've now been repealed. All the schools are coming back on this, and I've been saying this, this, I've been beating this drum for a while. They need to be teaching this in school. Because, and this has been said, our friend Chintan Mehta from Wells Fargo, CIO and Chief
Yes.
Innovation Officer, has said AI won't replace people, but the people who use AI better will replace the people who don't. So our kids need to be learning this. We need to be upskilling people. And, even like I've seen good examples of OpenText is doing this with Google Workspace, actually teaching people. They're using, I think, Tata Consultancy to teach people the value, the business value of AI. So it's not just here are these tools, but teaching them how to use it, how to best get the value out of it. IBM did that with some oil and gas company I'm not remembering the name of, but actually showing people how to get the best value out of these tools. And so
I
if
love that statement. In fact, I might steal it from Chayton and not give him any credit and use it as my own. No, I'm just kidding. No, we saw this with PCs. I mean, my first job, believe it or not, was in sales. And by the way, I was so bad at sales that I got into product management. But he didn't know how to use a PC. All his emails were printed out, and it's like, dude, you should probably learn how to use this or retire because this
right.
is the way that this is going.
Yeah.
Um, I do try, even though I'm getting up there in age, I really do try to use every tool that Gen Z or even Gen A is looking at using, if nothing else, trying it out. I would probably use. It's funny. I've bashed short videos, but it's like here I am. I'm into YouTube Reels and Instagram. I just don't like, some of the other platforms that some of the younger folks are on.
Mhm.
So, hey, good discussion here. This discussion is not ending. We're going to keep talking about this
Absolutely.
until unemployment gets to 5%. And it's like, you kind of know where this is going. Let's
Yeah.
go to the next topic. Okay. What's behind passive aggressive emails and hopefully passive aggressive messages over Slack too?
Yeah, actually, so this is another study. This was done by Preply. Preply is a language tutoring company. They actually do like face-to-face kind of, like those companies that do video therapy. It's kind of like that, but for language. But they do it in business context as well. So they did this study. I mean, it's a little bit of a PR thing, but they did they released this study, and they did. I went back and I always look at the methodology because I want to make sure that these studies are legit.
You have to. And I used to have a joke that said the only research I believe is done by my own company, but
Right.
that's more of a joke than anything else. That is the smart thing to do.
Yeah. So the one thing, so they, this is all Americans. They polled 1,000 people aged 18 to 76, about half and half female and male. One thing that they did not do, and I really wish that they had done, was segment this between remote and in-person workers.
Yeah.
Because what I think is happening here is that there has to be one of the statistics that they had was that the passive aggressive emails were happening in instances where when the person saw the other person face to face, that aggression wasn't there. So it's a lack of communication. And I think that some of this is caused by not seeing people. And I think sometimes it's just a matter of picking up a phone. It's communication skills. It's just, different styles. Really like quick but funny story. In my last job as a CMO, I worked really closely with the product team
Yeah.
and, a bunch of engineers. I just happened to write, even in Slack and in chat, somewhat, I punctuate my sentences, and I still write as if I'm writing, you know, an email or something else. Well, they thought I was very formal. And so when I got together with them in person here in Austin, we got together as a team, and, we're having some drinks and we're having fun. And they were like, we had no idea you were fun. I was
Ah,
like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? They were like, yeah, we totally thought you were super uptight. You punctuate your Slack. I was like, it's so, I mean, so your impression of somebody by their way of communication can really vary. Like, I don't write, I mean, you've probably seen this in chat. I don't write LOL. I write, that's very funny.
right. That's so funny. Oh my gosh.
So communications can really vary, and somebody can get the wrong impression. And, one of the things, and I'll go back to this IBM study, if you go deeper into it, the most critical skills required of the workforce are time management skills, ability to prioritize, work effectively in team environments, and ability to communicate effectively.
It's so
So,
funny you say that. I mean, I learned that in 1990 in a training program, and what was it called? A Ben Franklin, A1, A2, B1, B2. Are you
yeah,
telling me 33 years later, we're pretty much these are the basics, right?
yep. And it's changed over time, but we are back to that. In 2023, we are back to the ability to communicate effectively is the number 3 priority for executives of most critical skills required of their workforce. So what I think is really interesting is I feel like this is a really interesting, a really great opportunity for a company like Grammarly, or even, Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, to put in some widget. I mean, now we've got this AI that can identify anything, some trigger words. I mean, there's some really clear terms like per my last email,
Yeah.
or, things that trigger people that feel like those are like the passive aggressive terms. I mean, Grammarly can tell you when you sound, you want to sound more optimistic,
Yeah.
or, whatever. So Grammarly, listen to me.
I
Put in
love
some
it.
trigger words.
I love it. Let's move to the next topic here. Microsoft bringing AI to the front line.
Yep.
What is new product, new capabilities?
These are new capabilities that they have put into Copilot in Dynamics 365 Field Service, and also in some of their retail um, retail solutions for 365. But right now, there are 2.7 billion frontline workers. That's more than twice the number of desk desk-based workers.
Desk bound, desk based.
Yeah, desk-bound, or what some people call knowledge workers. I don't think that that's a nice thing to say, um, because frontline workers are very much knowledge-based workers. But
Yeah.
over 60% of, this is from a Microsoft Work Index study, 60% of frontline workers struggle with having to do repetitive or menial tasks that take away from their meaningful work, and half are burned out on their jobs. So Copilot in Dynamics 365 Field Service, just a couple of things. Simplifies work order creation by pre-populating details from emails or chats that are in Outlook or Teams. Technicians can optimize scheduling based on factors like travel time and skill set. They can draft customer response message within Dynamics 365. They can review upcoming work orders, share details, use remote assist for troubleshooting. And then soon it will support frontline managers for shifts, apps, data sources to provide insights and prompts. So really, it's just giving the frontline workers all of these tools that a lot of people will have in 365, like all of these co-pilots. So I saw actually earlier, I was watching your 6.5 podcast on the road with Lenovo.
Why, thank you.
It was good. I do love the on the road. I feel like there's just such a fun energy to that. But you talked about, like, we started with consumer applications with search, and then enterprise SaaS, and then we go to being able to use proprietary data to make people's jobs better, and that's when it really gets interesting. So now being able to take it to frontline workers where a lot of their day is like filling out forms and filling out and figuring out shifts and just prioritizing things. And if we can make their jobs easier, one, it's really hard to staff for a lot of those jobs, but also there's the communication aspect. And I think that Microsoft is really focusing on that part of it. A lot of frontline workers, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's a big percentage of frontline workers that don't even have company emails.
Yeah.
So to be able to use something like Teams to get those push notifications out to a big group of people. So kind of integrating all of this sort of next gen AI into the frontline brings these frontline workers into not just the full kind of company culture and dynamic, but it allows them to concentrate on the work that they need to get done, not just all this backlog of paperwork. And it also eliminates the mistakes that are going to be made by what happened with my fireplace recently. That was probably just a mistake that somebody forgot to log when my house was getting built. And it ended up being, a very costly mistake for the builder and a very big pain in the butt for me. So, this kind of stuff, it's really important for frontline workers. And I think it's great that Microsoft is paying attention to that. And it's a huge, huge market opportunity considering the number of workers and how many problems there are to solve there. And they're doing the same for retail. And then, there's a million problems to solve there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting up to date in a few weeks in New York City, Microsoft's event. I think we're going to see a lot of AI, like we've heard from Microsoft since November. And who knows, you might be going too. So we'll see. Let's go into the final chapter here, hot or not co-working spaces. Ironic, I am videoing this from a co-working facility, unnamed, here in Austin, Texas. No, actually, it's not WeWork. I'm in a WeWork for adults, which is called it's called Firm Space. But I think WeWork are they out of business? Are they? I mean, what's happening here, Mel?
It's funny. I just saw Dan Primack. There's a link to it if you want to look at it. Dan Primack is one of my favorite journalists, and I'm sure you're very familiar with him. He's one of the good ones. He wrote an article, and the title was "We Broke."
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Yeah. WeWork is going under. I mean, I guess they warned the market that they will not have. They probably don't have the resources to survive. The SEC suspended their ability to trade warrants. They're still trading common stock, but they're suspended on warrants. And so it kind of gave everybody sort of like this panic symbol of like, oh, co-working is over.
Yeah.
But it really isn't. I mean, there's actually a tremendous amount of demand for co-working spaces. There's so many reasons for that, right? Like there's some companies who just gave up their office space entirely because they thought nobody's ever going back to the office. So why have the overhead of office space? And there are some people who maybe their companies haven't gone back to the office, but they actually do want to be in person with people, or they want to get away from their house because of, like you said, the the gardener or the kids screaming or whatever. You
I
know,
mean,
you just,
I worked at home. I mean, the first 4 years of creating more insights and strategy, I worked home, and then it kind of became when Pat was home, Pat's home, Pat the husband is home, Pat the dad is home, and it's
yes,
like I'm dad and I'm husband, but I got to get work done, folks.
yeah, yep. You have to be like in your own space. And yeah, I mean, right now with construction going on in the house, I've got to move around and stuff. But otherwise, I'm in my office and the door is locked and kids know. I mean, right now kids are back at school, thank God. But you really do have to kind of create that boundary. But there's a time where sometimes you just want to be around other people.
Yes.
And, I mean, I've been to your office. It's a great space. There's coffee, there's meeting rooms, there's, a gorgeous view. There's, all these resources that you have, and you're around people. You can, have visitors in. I'm not going to have a meeting here if a client's in town, and I need to find a place to have a meeting. I'm not going to have people at my house. So there are other co-working spaces that are doing quite well. They've raised a lot of money recently they're I think that it's like supposed to be, I don't know, it's in there somewhere, like 17% year over year growth. So just because WeWorks is not doing well, I think that is a big indication of the way that it was managed by the CEO, not the company itself. Or the sector. And so if we're answering hot or not, I'm going to say co-working is still hot.
Yeah, the way that they bought, I mean, the way that they bought real estate, I think is a good 30-year play. But man, where we are now, and they hit the. I'm not going to use the P word in totality because we
Right.
get deranked on everything. But
Can't use that.
the previous 3 years, I mean, could barely come in the office, right?
Hmm.
And then now we're fighting people coming into the office.
Hmm.
I mean, my thoughts are if you're a company that's okay with 1 or 2 days of the week coming in the office, you may not need to have real estate, and then you could cycle through people. But
Right.
again, the price per square footage of what you can get in certain cities is going lower and lower, and people are defaulting. They're just turning in the keys and defaulting on their loans versus
Yeah.
restructuring the loan. So it's an ugly space. So hey, let's wrap here. We love to wrap and talk about kind of what's next, where we're going to be on the road. I'm going to be hitting Google Cloud next week, and then I'm remote working out of Colorado for a week.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah, it's not 100 there. Newsflash, which is great. And then I'll be hitting Dreamforce for Salesforce, and then I'm going to be hitting Intel Innovation, and then I'll hit Oracle Cloud World, and I may or may not be going to the Microsoft event then, and then a week where I'm not traveling.
Wow.
So that's six weeks if you're counting, folks.
I actually have a fairly mellow so far. I mean, I shouldn't speak too soon, but a fairly mellow, well, travel wise, and
Yeah.
not work wise, but travel wise for September. My October is probably the craziest I've ever seen anything. I am in Las Vegas for the Ceridian Analyst Summit. I go to Zoomtopia, then I go to Adobe Max, which I'm really excited about because that's
Yes.
their creative conference. And there's so much going on with, like you were talking about, with creatives and everything. And there was just this week a ruling on copyright for AI produced works. And so more on that later. We'll talk about that on
Yes.
another. That's just a whole big thing in itself. But I'm just so curious to find out what the whole creative community feels about that, and how that's. I think that'll evolve. But then we've got Boxworks. Then I go to Dubai for GitTex Global. Then WebEx One in LA, and then we've got SAP Tech Ed, and I'm gone every single week in October. So My kids are going to be like, we have a mom? I don't know.
I'm sorry or thank you. Depending on where you want to go, it's probably good up front. But hey, thanks for tuning in. Great show. We covered a lot of things. Let us know what you think, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Hit us up. You know where to find us. And we'll see you back in 2 weeks. Take care.